everyone. Welcome to another episode of Unscripted. Today, I am with Michael Toriello. Michael, how's it going?
Going great, Nathan. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here. Now, tell us what you do for Condé Nast.
I lead a team called Meeting and Event Technology. My career over the last 25 years has been predominantly in event production on the technology side. And that's what I was hired to do here at Condé Nast in 2020, 3 weeks before the pandemic. And then during the pandemic, I inherited the traditional AV responsibilities as well. So Meeting and Event Technology at Condé Nast does three things. First and foremost, we are the internal production resource for live streaming and for in real life events. As you may know, Condé Nast does thousands of events across the globe, and we don't touch them all, but what we do is look at as many opportunities as we can to in-source production, reduce cost, or at least consult when necessary. Secondly, we are the Zoom admins. We're a Zoom house, but we're the admins for the end users, not necessarily like the UCC team. And then third, we are the traditional AV responsible for implementation and design of all of our global meeting and event spaces across all of our markets.
That's quite a workload, Michael, quite a workload. Well, first of all, just thanks for being here. Now, you mentioned events and production, and this is starting to come up in a lot of these podcasts where a lot of corporates are building out their own studios. Now, your use case is very different because you're actually into event production and creating content. So I know you've been looking at NDI because you've been using all the traditional broadcast formats, but talk about that journey as to what you're doing with remote video, because obviously that's a major focus area for you.
Sure. When I started, it was just video over SDI and the traditional formats when I started my career, it was a truck on the street or renting fiber from Vivix, having a global closed circuit network with my prior company. And then coming here, that was the technology that I knew, but video over IP was getting bigger and bigger. And then I owned the Zoom responsibility. And then we went into a pandemic. So then how do you create virtual? And I started seeing, as a lot of people did during the pandemic, the rise of vMix. And first we used vMix with just regular analog signal, cameras with SDI cable right into a switcher and then into the SDI input of the vMix computer. And I knew that NDI was out there and existing. I was scared of it at first, as you wouldn't think I'm a technophobe, but I don't like using events as the guinea pig for the next event. So when we had time to test it and I was able to see, I can put a camera on the 24th floor in our photo video studios, where I am now, and our vMix studios on the 20th floor. And I could bring the cameras in that way and it would work. And so then we started to, can we build an NDI network in the building? And now our next step is, can we build an NDI network globally where our cameras in London can be found by our vMix studio here in New York? But I must confess, I am early on the learning curve. So I'm late to the party and early on the learning curve, I guess. So, there are probably people watching who are like, yes, we've been figuring out this and the bandwidth for video over IP and NDI versus simply 2110. And so I'm happy to get as much learnings from the viewers as possible on this.
I wouldn't say it's late or new or old or whatever, right? I mean, everyone's on their own learning curve. They're on their own journey at this point. But I've actually been experimenting with the NDI myself, actually for podcasting. And it is really convenient because you just, when I isolate myself. So if I'm doing a podcast with 2 or 3 people, I'll run my own NDI cables on my own switch so that there's no traffic issues at all. Some of our cameras that we make also have a PoE, so that kind of doubles up. So you're providing power to the camera as well as the data layer, right, essentially. And then even up to the crazy pedals on the floor where you're kind of switching cameras back and forth.
I'm not there yet, Nathan. I'm still able to hire, a couple people here and there, but They're at the rate we're going. Yes, pedals are going to be, we'll advance the slides with the pedals, and Stream Deck with my right hand and vMix with my left. That is kind of where we're going.
I will tell you, one of the things I learned the hard way was with the pedal was, when you're sitting, especially in a relaxed position, and you have we had 2 leather chairs. This was episode 10 with Sheena Voider from CDW. And I didn't test this out. I just put it on the floor thinking it'd be great. But as I laid back, I didn't realize when you arch your foot as in relaxed mode, it's really hard to you're basically bending forward to hit the pedal to actually go back and forth. That was my first lesson that's just not the right way to do it. I probably should have used a deck to do it, to have buttons to switch back and forth. But the second thing I learned the hard way was not understanding how to use tally lights. Because, I had 3 cameras and I'm switching from memory, but I had no idea what camera was on. So I was just kind of guessing, and I was just hoping and praying that it was going to be right. It was right, luckily. But I'm like, wow, I need monitors on every single camera so I know exactly which camera's on and what's broadcasting. So anyway, amateur hour over here. You're not late to the party. We're all kind of trying to figure this out. And that's the whole point of doing these podcasts, is to learn from each other and offer advice, right? Okay, so you've obviously you're doing a lot in the broadcast event production space. But you're managing everything from New York. So you have this massive global team, right, that's working on all these different products and magazines and events. How does that work? How do you manage to successfully do that at scale from one place in the world?
Yeah, and let's define global team. By global team, it's the company. It's my the larger orgs of my colleagues. My team is relatively small. We have a small team in London, and we have a small team here in New York. But we have offices throughout the globe, in Mumbai and Bangalore, Chennai, Milan, Madrid, Munich. And we don't have employees on our teams there. So it's making sure that if we're going to be doing a project in one of our market cities, that we meet the needs of that market. Throughout my career, I'm very grateful that I have had an opportunity to work with markets across the globe based in New York. And one of the first things I have learned to do is, at the start of these conversations, just apologize for my being a monoglot and just thank everybody on the call for conducting the call in English. Now, on one hand, you can say these people signed up to work for an American-based company, but it is a rare thing that they get an opportunity to hear that, look, I am sorry I don't speak the language, as opposed to just coming in and assuming that this call is going to be conducted in English because Condé Nast is based in London and New York. So, just trying to put myself in the market's shoes and not, kind of be the American overlord coming in and telling you how we're going to do your project. So, keeping that in mind in the culture of these countries as we're coming in for the project, at the same time, meeting their needs, making the calls when it's convenient for them. So, sometimes that's tough with Asia and Australia, but it's okay for me to be up at maybe 5 in the morning or 6 o'clock in the morning sometimes. And then they don't mind being on the occasional 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. call. Those are just some of the things, even before we get into the technology and the implementation.
You've had it easy. I've had a lot of 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. So maybe I should rethink how I'm scheduled. Actually, I didn't schedule them. That was just required to be there. But it is hard. It is really hard, especially when you live in the U.S. and you have Asian counterparts and things like that. So what's next for you and your team?
I had mentioned earlier just about the content production, that talking about video over IP. The reason why we're getting into it is the next big thing for us is, how can we, as a technology organization, I'm not in the production team. We have a whole team of video producers, but I'm in technology. And our job as a cost center is to reduce the cost for everybody else. We spend our CapEx and show you the return on that investment over time. And the next big thing for me is, can we produce content, live streaming back to our websites, to the different brands, and not spend any external dollars, any external production dollars, and keep the same quality? Yeah. When we're doing an event for Vogue, it has to look like Vogue or GQ, Vanity Fair. So that's the challenge, to, good, fast, and cheap. I think for us right now, we are looking at good and cheap, and the road in front of us is going to be a little bit longer, but we're getting there. And we're going to be able to do actual content production for our brands from a technology organization with the video knowledge that we've learned.
That's great. I mean, you've definitely come a long way, and obviously so many great things to see coming from Condé Nast ahead of us here. Michael, just thank you for being on the show, and thank you for being a great customer. I mean, you're always just ready to help us out and talk to our other customers and be on stage with us. So thank you for the time. Love the perspective. And just once again, thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Nathan. Looking forward to see you soon.
Absolutely. And that's it, folks. That's another episode of Unscripted. See you all next time.